Welcome back to the Quantum Connection podcast. We are so excited you are here. I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Heather Crimson. And then we also have a guest here today, which we are so excited to have. We have Kelley Erickson. She has an amazing Instagram. I love it. I learned from you, Kelley, which I think is just like, I love learning, being in this field and being a part of this community and learning from each other. I'm like, oh man, that's so cool. It helps you make connections. And you share really, really deep science. So it's really cool. And I appreciate that. And Kelley is a holistic health practitioner, and she has some, other titles that she did in the past as well, which covers it all. But yeah, we're really excited to have you here today, Kelley. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome, thank Kelley. You. Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you ladies.
Yes. So I have the good fortune of co-hosting a group at this time. It's going to wrap up in a couple of weeks with Kelley for women and helping them to come more into themselves after a history of trauma and create a sense of safety for themselves. And it's based on quantum biology and things like attachment and all the cool stuff, right, that we are offering to them. So it's been a real privilege for me and a very, very heartening experience to work with you, Kelley. And I'm just so grateful.
You're going to make me cry. I feel like I'm the one who's privileged, so thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, we have a great group of women who are just eager and curious, and they're willing to sort of drop into, their own vulnerability as we've co-created a safe sort of nest for them. And it's just like, that's what's really sort of ringing true to me as I think about where I want to go with things I want to offer, right, is more of a community focus, which I know is a whole nother like, oh, it's a lot of moving parts, but it just, women in community for me has been the most nourishing and healing for me. So like just doing this podcast is a small, experience of that with just the three of us. Now we're going to co-create this experience. So
yeah,
I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty fascinating because I think that's one piece that I kind of still lacked in my journey was a deeper connection with women in particular, right? Like women I trusted, women who I considered peers, women who, oftentimes I look up to. And so creating this group with you, yes, has been also very healing for myself as well. So I enjoy it a lot.
Yes.
Oh, you guys are making me wish I was a part of it. Seriously, no. I feel the same way though. Like community and connection was so lacking in my life, and it's like finding this niche of people and doing the podcast with you, Heather, and finding like this niche of people in the quantum biology world and like people who are living the same way I'm living, and then listening to other podcasts like that. It's like, and then doing the homeopathy course and having that experience, like all of that has been like, wow, like I didn't realize how much I was lacking that in my life and how nourishing it is to a person to have that community and connection. Cause I don't think you can heal without that part.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you're kind of just isolated and, that's not the right frequency and vibration for healing. So like beautiful thing that you guys, ladies, are doing. I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, when you think about connection and community, when we're sick for whatever reason, whether that's from childhood trauma or any other sort of illness, your environment played a really big role in getting you to that place, right? And so when you take on this healing journey, a lot of it naturally falls by the wayside, so you kind of lose some connection with people, but also your growth puts you in a different headspace and physical space, and so you need to now recreate new connections that support this newer version of yourself. And so yes, this quantum community has been awesome, just totally incredible. Everybody's so welcoming, and I don't feel so alone anymore. I mean, telling people that I get up and watch the sunrise every day, I mean, that's the least of the weird things that I do. But even that, people would give you sideways looks like,
yeah,
you're crazy to think watching the sunrise is somehow gonna help you feel better, but it does.
It absolutely does. And it is so interesting what you said too about like, you had that isolation, you feel different. And then everybody in this quantum community is like so welcoming, so loving, so caring. I'm like, why is that? Maybe because they all watch the sunrise and they all practice this lifestyle. And that's why they're like so welcoming and happy and just have a high level of, frequency and vibration that I really enjoy. So yeah.
Vanessa, when you say that, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go.
It reminds me of the dichotomy of nature as like this amazing, profound, beautiful animals when they're expressing love and whatnot. But it's also can be a place where there's no empathy. People talk about that, right? And there's lots of like things that happen that can be scary in nature. But it's the same for humans, right? We have our shadow side and then we have our heart. And I think though that the quantum practices like going out and communing with nature, I call it making love with nature, but that might be too much. But like, you go and you soak up literally the energy from the earth, from the sun. It helps with us in bringing it like balance from what our so-called, animal nature or what our shadow side could be. I know we're getting off on a tangent here, but I just love this stuff. Like when we struggle, right, with whether it's trauma or whatever, it's dark, but there's goodness in the darkness in quantum biology. So going out and being in nature, I think it helps soothe all the edges of that when we can get stuck too much, or there's the spiritual bypassing, right? Like, oh, everything's great. Like it's not reality. The reality is there's things that are good and there's things that are bad. There's things that are hard. There's things that are easy. And nature really to me is the glue. What do you think, Kelley?
I think the way you expressed it is really a fantastic summary of it. You could take it to a little bit of a deeper level and say that it's creating coherence within your body when we talk about energy and all of that stuff. The way we're living today is, and I've been talking a lot about this on my Instagram page, our environment is robbing us of energy in all different manners, but junk light obviously is one of them. Non-native EMFs is another one. And so we need this valuable energy to do simple things like digest our food and sleep and all of these things. But we also need this energy to process our emotional baggage, so to speak, right? That takes extra energy. And so if you're living a lifestyle that's depleting your energy, you're not going to have any reserves for processing, for coping, for working through things. And so looking at it from this perspective, like returning to nature, getting outside and filling up those reserves gives you more of a capacity to manage the more difficult stuff of the emotions, right? And so I think putting it in that kind of context for people has like kind of been a light bulb moment. Because if you talk about, oh, your environment stealing your electrons, well, that is really interesting to people who like the sciencey stuff. But when you put it in terms of energy and you need this energy to do things like process your childhood trauma, it kind of hits people in a different manner.
Right.
Definitely.
In the therapy world, they'd be calling it resilience, right? But how would you define coherence just for somebody who's never really heard of that concept in the context we're speaking of it?
Well, I mean, from, I don't know, I guess a bigger perspective would just be, it's the state of love. Love is the ultimate flow state. So when lots of people are familiar with the heart torus and, those images that we see where the heart has this field of energy and it radiates about 6 feet out and other people pick up on this energy. Well, that image really is when someone's in a state of coherence. That's when your heart field is able to extend that 6 feet and give other people information that way. But when you're unhealthy you've got inflammation and your mitochondria aren't working properly, then you're no longer in a state of coherence. This is when emotions like hatred and anger and rage, these kind of emotions are running the show. And that would be what we would call cellular chaos. So, when you look at the the spectrum of emotions, we have our higher vibration emotions and our lower vibration emotions. It's kind of coherence sits at that top level where we're vibrating at love and peace and joy and harmony. And then that chaos is that anger, rage, resentment, all of that stuff kind of sitting down there at the bottom. And those lower density emotions, they're really dense. And so they sit heavy inside of your body. It's an energy that needs to be moved through you to get back to your equilibrium state, to so that you can feel those emotions, those loving, connection, happiness, joy, you looking at your glimmers, all of these things. You have to get back to that state and that's where I teach a lot of my clients. You need to focus on your cellular health, because if your cells are dysfunctional, trying to manage what's going on up here or in your heart, it's going to feel impossible. It's going to feel like you just can't get a handle on it. And then when you see people's Instagram posts where they're like, oh, just love everybody and forgive, you're going to be pissed because you don't understand how to get there. And that's because you are cellularly depleted, so to speak.
Yeah. That's beautiful. The way that you explain that. I loved it. It's really, really beautiful. And it's like such an interesting thing. Like, I know when I started doing a lot of the quantum biology stuff and even homeopathy too, I was feeling more of emotions. And sometimes those other emotions need to come to the surface. You need to let those things out and let those things go. But like, I don't know, like I was able to like walk outside and just be like, have that sense of gratitude, or sense that like really feel that love, or like look at my son and be like, oh man, I just love him so much. Or like all of those things that like sometimes are just, because I was in a really unhealthy state at one point. So all those things that kind of were not in my body for a little while really came back with doing all of these things. So it's just interesting. I was reflecting as you were speaking. So very cool stuff. Yeah. And it is because you're in a more coherent, more flow state for sure. So,
everything's moving freely through you, right? The stuff is supposed to come in, move through, and then move out. And when you have, you can look at it from a different standpoint. If you have energetic blockages, that energy is going to come in and get stuck and get lodged somewhere. And then we can see disease in different organ systems that vibrate at that particular frequency or whatever. But I think there's such an overlap in everyone's, what people are trying to address from different standpoints or different specialties. But when I dug into the quantum biology stuff, then it started to make sense. Like, these people are speaking this, the same, well, it's not the same language. They're using different words to describe the same thing. So if you talk about things in terms of energy, or if you talk about them on the quantum scale, or if you're talking about homeopathy, right? It's all dealing with the same stuff. So whatever language you resonate with, I think is, what you should choose for you. But for me, when I came into the world of quantum biology is when the light bulb really went off for me. And I was like, oh, now I understand. Okay.
Yeah. So let's get into that. Like, what brought you into the world of quantum biology? Because I know you were talking a little bit before, you did Reiki first, right? And functional nutrition. So like what helped you, or what made you decide to like dig deeper and continue to learn all this information? Because
so it started really with a health journey for my son. He was about 7 or 8 when he was diagnosed with a movement disorder, which it turned out to be Tourette's. And they wanted to put him on a whole bunch of medications right away. And I was like, absolutely not. That's not happening. So I started to look for alternative remedies to try to help him, because the movement disorder wasn't the only thing I was seeing. That's the only thing the doctors recognized, but there was something else going on, and I didn't know enough to know what it was. I just knew something wasn't right. So I sought out different, treatments for him, and we weren't seeing any progress. So we decided to sell our house, pull our kids out of school, buy an RV, and travel around the country for a year, because I thought maybe stress was playing a role. And at this point, I was drinking to cope with my own emotional struggles. My husband was working all the freaking time. I had 3 little kids at home. Just life was way too stressful, and we lived in a big city. So we did that. We got on the road, we lived in an RV, and I think it was our first winter. We were wintering in Arizona, and I decided to take him to a functional medicine doctor just to see if I could get some different answers. They ran a bunch of blood work on him, and they said that he was likely going to develop bipolar or schizophrenia. That his blood work reflected that of an adult who had already been diagnosed. So at this point, he was probably 9, almost 10 years old. And as terrifying as that sort of diagnosis or prediction of the future was, that hit the nail on the head. That explained the other stuff that I was seeing in him. But of course, being a mother, it breaks your heart. You don't want this for your children. So I went home and I prayed all weekend. And Monday morning, I opened up Instagram and I started asking a bunch of accounts that I had followed, like, what can I do? Do you have any resources? And someone pointed me to a doctor who was also in Arizona. So I reached out to her. She got us in the very next day, and she told us about sun and the ketogenic diet and these different modalities. And I didn't understand it by any stretch of the imagination, but I was willing to try anything at this point. So I tried to get him into ketosis. I tried to get him into the sun for about 6 months, and it was just a nightmare. He had a lot of resistance. And so it was like that summer, I thought, I'm going to have to do this with him. I was overweight. I was not healthy myself. And so I thought, well, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? I will lose weight, and he won't be the only one in the family having to do this. So I'll do it with him. And so I did. And about 6 months into my own journey, I was like, I'm not just losing weight here. I'm processing my childhood trauma in a way that 20 years of talk therapy could never even begin to touch. And I couldn't understand it. And I had this feeling of love and connection, not to anyone in particular, but to the world itself. And this was a big deal for me because my childhood trauma started at such a young age and persisted. I continued to persist these poor behaviors on myself, but until I was able to get away from my mother, which wasn't until about 14 or 15. So I had lots of years of really awful things happen to me. And so to be able to feel, I guess the point of that is I never felt connected to anything. I didn't feel connected to my family, not my husband and my children, but my mother and father and sisters and all. I didn't feel connected. I never felt like I belonged anywhere. And I felt like every time, there were people I knew for 20 and 30 years. And every time I went to their house or I was around them, it felt brand new to me. Like I was having to start over every single time. And I tried to explain this to people. I tried to explain it to my therapist. I was never given a good explanation of what that was or how that came to be. But so in ketosis and in the sunshine, about 6 months in, I felt connected to everything. I felt so full of love that I couldn't comprehend it myself. Like I didn't understand. So I started studying, and I decided to go back to school for nutrition because I thought a lot of it was falling into the nutrition category. I thought it's got to be mostly related to ketosis. So I went back to school for nutrition. I became a functional nutrition coach. And then through that process, I was able to further my education a little bit and take a board certification test that allowed me to become a holistic health practitioner. And then maybe it was before that I did my first Reiki training. And then after that is when I did my second Reiki training. And all of this learning was really just to help my son. I loved what was happening to me, but I wanted all of this knowledge so that whatever came up in his future, I was prepared to deal with, because I knew that, we were seeing improvements like 2 weeks into having him be in ketosis, like full time, 2 weeks into it, that resistance, and later I learned it was called oppositional defiance disorder, disappeared. Not 100%, but like 93% gone. He became friendly and kind to his siblings, and you could ask him to do something and it wasn't a total nightmare. So, I really did think that a lot of it had to do with nutrition. But through the nutrition course, I realized they weren't going to teach me what I was looking for. So at the same time that I was going to school, I started studying mitochondria and the cell danger response and all of that stuff. And then the light bulbs just continued to go off. I was like, okay, now I understand. I'm getting it. I had met people like Carrie Bennett and, just some other people in this community along the way that really kind of helped foster some of that, putting the pieces together for me. I saw what they were studying and what they were posting about. So, it kind of encouraged my understanding or my ability to study, because if I hadn't had people like Carrie, for example, posting the kinds of things she was posting, I wouldn't have necessarily known what to look up or what to study. And so that's just really what I did. I thought about joining the Quantum Biology Collective cohort that first year that they offered it. But it seemed a little bit out of my price range. So I just studied on my own, and I listened to podcasts and, just anything. I have just mounds of papers that I've printed out and books everywhere. And that's just what I've done, is just studied. And I find it to be some of the most freaking fascinating information ever. And it's where I find my joy. I love it. I really do.
Well, that's obvious in your posts and in your energy, and just hearing you speak now, it's like, I don't know how many times I had goosebumps and like these epiphanies of like, oh my God, so much that you offer the world, right? And you doing it all by yourself, that's the real learning. That's the self-study, right? That's how we really learn things. It's not by receiving necessarily, it's by doing it ourselves and
Yeah.
in finding the information and integrating it. But I mean, I can just say, Kelley, what a journey you've been on, right? From those early years of dysregulation, dissociation, right? All of those things that we don't feel connected, that's the hallmark of trauma. That's the hallmark of trauma. And then we have to find our way to, how do we build safety? How do we figure it out? How do we find a safe spot, safe people, right? And how do I especially feel safe in myself?
Yeah.
And you're just like such an awesome like example or testament or testimony, or right. I mean, it's just really powerful. And I can see why your Instagram is blowing up. It's because of this resonance that you have, and this conviction and this inner knowing and the confidence, even if inside you don't always feel super confident like most humans, right? It's so like powerful. It's so powerful.
I think that I have a really good spirit community that is watching over me, because while I was studying this, like even terms like redox, right? Like I remember the first time I looked it up, it was a foreign freaking language, man. I did not understand what the fuck they were talking about. But I just knew, like there were bits and pieces that just said, something in my periphery said, write it down, write it down. That's the one. That's the one to study. That's the piece to, I had no idea. I don't even remember who turned me on to Dr. Doug Wallace, but I found the book and, like all of these different parts and pieces that I really had to put together. And even still today, there are things I learned a few years ago that are just now really like making sense. It's like, oh, that's what that, okay, kind of understanding it on a much deeper level. And so yeah, it's pretty fascinating, and I'm sure I get some of it wrong. I was focused on the technical details of it for a long time, and I'm a perfectionist, probably a little bit trauma related, but also personality driven. My mom did say I was kind of always like that as a young child, but so I was focused on getting all of the pieces right for a long time. But now I feel like I'm in a space where it's more about feeling my way through it. And I think a lot of it has to do with connecting with you and talking about these things in a different way, and developing relationships with my clients, because honestly I think a lot of my clients are brought to me for me reasons too, right? Not just for
Absolutely.
their healing journey, but
Yep.
they've got something to teach me or bring to me to help round me out, so to speak. And so yeah, I look at every step of this journey like not even questioning that next step, like how you and I came together, right? I was like, oh, your New Mexico trip looks great. I want to develop a community. And here we are just 2 months later, and we've developed this group, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't question the pieces that fall into place anymore. It's there for a reason. And I do think that I have pretty good spirit guides that are helping me, because I don't know how I would have done all of this without help.
It's like just following that, like life is divinely guided and you're just following along the little breadcrumbs and just going with it. I love that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that you said how you learn from your clients. I believe that too. Like they're brought to you so you can do some learning always. I always think that. So that was a really great little piece there too. And what a story of like such resilience, like and like, determination, like, and love for your son. It's just so beautiful. And, I know you're doing fantastic now, and that's so great to hear. And, I know he's probably doing pretty well too, and you're working really hard with him. And I'm just have to say how proud I am of you as a mom, and just like that love that was shining through either way. You know what I'm saying? Even though you had the trauma and you had the disconnection, all that, it was still shining through in such a beautiful way, because that was your driving force, was the love for him, to heal him. And just, I mean, amazing. So is he now, I know you said he was resistant. Is he more on board with these practices and principles now, or is it still kind of challenging? It's still,
Uh,
I'm just super curious as a mom.
well, we
Kids
did.
too.
Yeah, totally. We did it for a couple of years, and there still was a lot of resistance. So I do have to say that he's not my birth child. He is mine by just love, right? And so I think that
Something
played a
happens when you say that. I've seen that happen for a couple times now. Help me know. Is it okay to ask, Kelly? Because there's something so deep here for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I wonder if it brings up something about your history. You know what I mean? You really relate to this kid. This is not just a boy, right? This is so powerful. You like
Um,
rescued him.
no, I don't think so. I think it's another one of those relationships that was brought into my life to reflect back to me what I needed to do for
He
myself.
rescued you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so all of these hardships and difficult moments were just, it was growth. I had a lot of growing to do.
So
And so it's, our relationship, had you asked me a few years ago, well, asked both of us, we both probably would have said, we butt heads, we don't really enjoy each other's company. It was really hard. But now, through all of it, and I've always said this to my husband, like, there's something deeper for him and I. Like, there's something big
Mhm.
planned for us. Um, but so, no, I don't continue to push these practices on him. Obviously, I'm the mother of the house, so I control the food that comes in, and, I have all of those choices. But ultimately, he's 15 or almost 15. Um, and I want him to have autonomy. I want him to be able to make decisions. And I want him to fully understand the consequence of his decisions. And so the only way we can do that is by letting people be who they're it's part of the experience. I spent so much time trying to control it and funnel all of it into this perfect little neat package. And the more I did that, the more resistance I received in return, right?
Mhm.
And so it's been a slow journey of letting go and understanding that by letting go, I'm actually strengthening our relationship together. And so you know, he's a 15-year-old boy. He wants to do 15-year-old boy things. But on the flip side, like, when I don't like to compare, but when I look at what we do in our home versus what happens in lots of other homes, I know that like, it may not be perfect and I don't control everything, but I've got a pretty good handle on a lot of it. And, he'll say things like, I bought him a pair of updated red light glasses. And, I just, here you go. And if you want to, you should, those kinds of things. I would really appreciate it if you did, kind of stuff. And the other night he came to me and he was like, oh, I really like wearing those glasses when I watch TV at night. And I was like, oh, so just small wins like that. He also used to have major sensory issues. So, anything on his hands required him to wash his hands. Never could you get him to walk barefoot. Even getting him out in the sun was really challenging because he had really high histamine levels. So it felt like his skin was on fire. And now he'll walk outside barefoot and he'll go sit outside and watch the sunrise on his own on a weekend. He just goes and sits outside or he takes his breakfast outside. So, and then, he'll make comments like, oh, my science teacher doesn't know anything. And I tell her my mom knows. And I was like, you probably shouldn't do that. It's not a good idea. Nobody wants to be made to feel like they're an idiot. But,
Well, when my kids come home and they say something like, you shouldn't eat meat, I'm like, well, we just got to have a little conversation about what your teacher just told you.
yeah.
Because, there is, like, not to get political, but, like, I was a teacher for 15 years, and what they're taught in school sometimes is really unfortunately not great. And my kids have come home from their nutrition, they have a health teacher, and they'll say things. I'm like, well, let's just revisit that and have a conversation about it, because I want them to know the truth. Mine are still little younger. I have one close. I have one going to be 14. It's like crazy. But yeah, I love that too, about like, just like reminding them. I mean, I still go in and I remind them and I say, the internet's going off at this time. Put your blue blockers on. Like, I just remind them of those things, because I want them to have that, but they also are so young still that they don't have that. Like, they don't know that. Like, but like the other day, I think I mentioned this. I don't remember if I mentioned the podcast. Now, my youngest Matthew, he's like, my light bulb and my light seems bright. And he had an incandescent light in his room. And he's like, you have a red one? I put a red one in his room. He said, this is nice. He goes, I like this bulb. It's real soothing in here. Like, those were his exact words. I was like, okay, then.
Winning.
Like, you just have to like roll with it. And of course he's 7. So it's like, he's little, but it's just like, you have to just, I feel like, and I relate to the comparison thing too, because like, my husband has to rein me in and remind me, like, look at how good we're doing, like when we compare to like what other families are doing. And I know that's like, I'm not trying to say like downgrade what they do, but I'm like, we really are, fostering a very, healthy lifestyle, in many, many ways. And I'm sure you are too. So it's like, we have to remind ourselves of that, because I feel like with that perfectionistic kind of personality, and I totally have that too. It's no surprise that I got some autoimmune diseases, right? Like, it's just, I find that as a trend, right? And it's like, I have to remind myself of what a good job you really are doing sometimes. So it's like, you need to like step back and be like, oh yeah, look, we are doing a lot to support the family and do the right thing. So yeah.
I do think that. And again, comparison is the thief of joy, so I really try not to do it. But sometimes you have to have something to measure yourself against, right? And so that's where I allow myself to kind of look around a little bit and just go, okay, but no judgment, because I was there in that, similar boat not very long ago. It wasn't very long. But I also like to think like, what is it? My ceiling is my children's floor. And so I'm only building this foundation, and to get to watch what they do with it, how they run with it as adults and carry it into their adulthood and what kind of changes they're capable of making, that makes me really excited, because I know that they're pondering these things. Like last year, I had all 3 of my kids in public school, and my daughter came home and was working in the garden with me. It must have been in springtime. And she said, my teacher's a liar. And I said, what? She's like, yeah, she's a liar. And I said, Maggie, no, why would you say that? And she was like, well, she said that the food at the grocery store is fresh. And I told her that's not fresh. It was shipped across the country and it's under artificial light. I had never even had that conversation with her. So somehow she put pieces together and made that connection that was not fresh food. So what the teacher was telling her was a lie. I just laughed, and I was like, I don't think she's trying to lie.
No, it's the fact that we just aren't taught. We don't know. These things are not taught. And like, it's same thing, like no judgment. Like, there was a time I didn't know any of this. Like, I was living just like everybody else, like in my own little bubble, like just doing everything, not even thinking or questioning or doing any of these things. But it's like, we just don't know. So like, that teacher just doesn't know any better. So she's just, she's telling what she thinks is true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just, it's a lot that needs to be explored in the world. A lot that needs to be shared.
Yeah.
And I hope that's the hope with the podcast, is like, get it out there and share that, So
It's like a health journey is a lot about deprogramming yourself. And it's also a spiritual journey. I'm fully committed to that idea.
Yeah, 100%, right? It's peeling back the layers of the onion, discovering what the truth is, what resonates with you, what feels good to you, and letting go of all of the rest of it. And it does, I think, only happen in layers, like, because this programming is so thick and it's everywhere you turn, that you can only, your brain is only capable of peeling back small layers at a time, right? Because had you told me, I don't know, 4 years ago that the sun controlled, I don't know, particular things, I'd have been like, you're full of junk. And then I was talking to one of my neighbors a couple weeks ago, and I heard the dissonance there. It was like, the sun can't control that much of what's happening in our body. And I was like, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
But, I didn't want to unload and dump all of this crap. Like, I recognized it's just planting the seeds here and there and letting them grow on their own.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. It's so true. Yeah, you just got to keep planting those seeds, and then hopefully, people will come back and be like, "Oh, you told me this, and now I'm interested in this," or they'll go research or go look up or, study on their own. That's the hope,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because my neighbor also homeschools her kids. And so we were talking about Charlotte Mason and her philosophy on children's education and how they learn. And she had said to me, she was like, you'd be so proud, because Charlotte Mason says lighting has everything to do with, how a child learns and absorbs and behaves, and, to have the lighting be as natural as possible. And I was like, yay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, see, my kids are still in public school because they didn't want to. I mean, we had this conversation and I wanted to homeschool them, or I wanted them to be up, but it was, I had to make that decision where, what do they want? What about their community? What about their connection? And what did they really want out of their life? And that wasn't what they wanted. So they're still in public schools. And I'm like, I think about like the detriment of the artificial lights and how my seventh grader literally is on his Chromebook the entire day. You know what I mean? And they don't go outside that much. It's terrible. Like, and it drives me nuts. And there's no way he's going to wear blue blockers in school. And I'm like, I know the effects of these things, but I also know the effects of taking him away from his community, his connection, his peers, and all the things too. So it's like, it's just, you really have to weigh it out as a parent when you know this stuff, like what's really good for your kids, but, one day maybe the schools will change. This is my hope, my dream. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a far-fetched thing, but I'm like, I think about it all the time, because I'm a former teacher, and I know that you didn't take the QVC, but I think I mentioned this to Heather Crimson. We, on a call with Meredith one time, and she was like, if you could do anything with this knowledge, what would you do? And I was like, I would change the school systems. Like that would be the thing. Like, because we're just, the way that we are doing it is not right. And I just, in so many levels. And it's just like, man, if we could just change the lighting in the schools, we'd make an impact. Like, just that one simple thing would make such a huge impact. And, even as a teacher, not only do they have Chromebooks, every kid, which is like their own laptops that are running on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, they also have these giant smart boards. Like I used it too. That's like, it's like this huge computer screen that's instead of a chalkboard anymore. Like, that's what you use. So it's like, it's just where they're so inundated, and then that's just the lighting and the technology piece. Then you get into the food, and they're sitting in desks all day. Like, I could just go on and on about it. Like, I mean, I know that wasn't our topic of conversation, but it's just, it's a tough situation. So yeah.
I think this next generation is gonna really struggle. I mean, they're just bombarded with these devices, and whether it's putting a cell phone in their pocket. Like, I was thinking about that this morning when my son left for school. He, up until just a few months ago, he didn't have a cell phone, but now he's allowed to take one of our extra ones to school because he's in sports and we need to be able to stay connected. So I gave him one, but when he walked out the door, I thought about it being in his pocket, and the developing child, like, they're not even done growing yet, let alone putting it up to his head. We've had that conversation. Use headphones, put it on speakerphone, don't put it up to your head. I don't let him sleep with it in the room, in, you know, all of those things. But like these kids are glued to these devices. I mean, you go out in public to a restaurant or a movie theater or anywhere, and I mean, you know, the kids, you can't get them to take their faces away from it, and they hold it so close, which is even worse. Their brains aren't done myelinating yet, and so they're super susceptible to this damage. Yeah, I just, and then also too, I think I was at some event recently and I noticed how many kids are wearing glasses.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Yep. There's
Mhm.
eye toxicity.
Yeah.
That's just one.
I mean, I think it's also obviously it's a genetic predisposition because I didn't grow up with a cell phone and I got glasses in third grade. But I also watched a ton of TV, like a ton of TV as a kid. So that's probably part of it too. But two of my kids too, they have glasses already. But yeah, more and more you see it. And it's like my youngest just got glasses recently and I was hesitant because I didn't really want to do it. And I was like, man, I'm telling you, Matthew, we could fix this if you just let mommy help you. But of course, like, you know, it's like I can't control every aspect of his environment, is even like, just like you going back to what you were saying, even though as much as I want to, I can't control every aspect of his environment. Like I do my best, but it's like, yeah, it's so true though. They are so glued everywhere you go. I see it. And it's so disheartening. It's like, what happened to conversations at dinner? It's like it just doesn't happen. You know, we do have that rule at our house. There's no technology at dinner. When we eat, we talk with each other. That's what it should be. That's what it always should be. But like it's just like, yeah, you see it everywhere you go. And it's just, yeah. And like you said about their brains, they're not done developing. So they're so much more susceptible than we are. And that scares me about what's going to happen in the future generations, because now those are children who have been raised this way are then going to have children, and what's, you know what I'm saying? So that's going to, they'll have a lower level of health, and then they're going to raise kids with a lower level of health. That's not the right trend. We need to go the other way. We need to be, you know, fixing these things. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually like a good segue to kind of bring in the topic of melanin a little bit, because melanin, right, like it's a molecule that most of us understand is what makes our skin color or our hair color or our eyes, right? I don't think most people understand what kind of role it plays in our health, in particular in our eyes and in our ears, but also in our brain. Um, and putting these devices up to your ear is going to destroy the melanin that's in your ear. And you can end up with things like tinnitus or going deaf prematurely, right? Like aging this part of your ear much faster. Getting the things like age-related macular degeneration at a much younger age because you're staring at this device, and we have melanin in our eyes that gets degraded from the blue light and the non-native EMF exposure. There is a connection between melanin and dopamine. And so when we're destroying our melanin, we're creating this artificial dopamine spike. And so it's leading to like a whole host of addiction type behaviors in really young children. And, you know, there's the body it's complex, but it's not complex. Like it's kind of this juxtaposition. Like there's so much more going on than what we've been taught or told. And every system works together to support the other systems. And so you may think, well, oh, if I get ringing in my ears, no big deal, right? It's just my ears. I can get a hearing aid or whatever. But if there's damage in your ears or in your eyes, you know, you can guarantee there's damage in your brain. You know, look at the proximity. Your eye is an extension of the brain. So like not separating all of these functions or systems into individual parts, like they have to all be functioning and operating correctly. And so you see children with what may seem like a mild health disorder at 8, 9, 10 years old, what is their life going to look like at 40? Their body is going to be like an 80-year-old at 40, because they're starting off in a deficit from mom not taking care of herself. And then this environment that we're raising them in is just robbing them blind of their really important energy and cellular processes. So yeah, it's going to be hard for them.
Yeah. Well, that's the good news, is we're doing what we're doing. And so we have a mission, right?
Yeah.
A shared mission to continue to educate. Because I mean, as much as I want to focus on maybe other aspects of what we do, the education is so paramount. Because I just sent an email out to my list about like a poll to see what people wanted to learn about. And one of the segments of this Google form was, are you familiar with circadian biology? And most people put no. And I thought, oh, I guess I need to back up a little, because
Yeah.
it's so something we're marinating in all the time, and it's just a part of our everyday lives and the fabric of our, everything. And then I forget that people don't really know about all this, because I feel like I'm a little too isolated that way, right? I need to go out and talk to people and get a reality check of like, oh, right. Okay, this is what most people know, because they haven't had the chance to learn.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't
Yeah.
realize how detrimental all the radiation is, and the cell phones and the TVs and the gadgets that they wear, not to mention the food that they eat and all the stress they're under, and they, whatever, all the things are like compromising us, and it can seem overwhelming. So that's why we have to start from just the basics, right? And it's a lot, like you're saying, Kelley, there's a lot of this tapestry. And how do we break it down to the most is like basic components, so they can think, oh, energy system, or whatever metaphor that we use. Vanessa, what were you going to say?
Yeah, no, you made me think, like, somebody asked me the other day, was like, what do you do? I'm like, I help people with circadian biology and homeopathy. They're like, it's like I spoke a different language. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, what? Like, okay, let me slow that down. I'm like, on health and wellness, and I use nature. Okay. Like, like I use nature and I use an energetic medicine. Like, so yeah, it's true. Like we have, and I love that you did that with for your for your email list, because it gives us a good gauge of where do we need to start. And I think that too, like we just have to go to the basics sometimes, you know what I mean? And it also depends on your level of health, how much you can learn and absorb this information too. And I think, Kelley, you explained that like so beautifully, like you weren't really ready. And then when you started like doing the things, and then you started like healing, you were like, oh, I can absorb this and I can learn this. Like I found that too on my healing journey. There was a time that I couldn't really learn because I was too ill to learn. I wasn't in the place. And then there was a time that I got healthier and I was able to, put that knowledge together. So as you heal, I think you're able to like be more receptive to this information in a much bigger way.
You have to have the energy to do it, right? When I was at my worst with chronic fatigue, and then all the other things, the insomnia and the raging histamine issues and depression, anxiety, I literally could not read at all.
No.
I would read a paragraph over and over. I couldn't remember. I couldn't focus. It was like so depressing, because I love to read and learn. And that's like one of my favorite things ever. And it was like, okay. And I mean, I didn't have the energy to even do it. So and it wasn't like I was reading complicated stuff either. I was reading, whatever diet kind of stuff. But it takes energy to do everything. Without energy, we start to die faster, right? I mean, that sounds dramatic, but it's true.
Yeah.
Our system is compromised, and we don't have the vitality. We don't have the sexual energy. We don't have the intellectual energy. We don't have energy for relationships. And we don't also have the energy to process our emotions. It takes energy to have the fortitude and the tolerant to tolerate the difficult emotions, right? Even some positive ones. But so there's so many ways that we can look at this, right? This quantum piece of how do we help nourish ourselves every day. So like in bite-sized chunks, so we don't get overwhelmed, because not all of us have the luxury of just like taking care of ourselves all day and doing whatever we want, health-wise. Sounds good. I would sign up for that. But we have things to do. So how can we weave that in a way that is, that's harmonious, and it's not, making us more stressed out? And I think that's what people need. So Kelley, your information, I think, is super inspiring. I'm just noticing the time. I could literally talk for the next 2 weeks to you guys. Like, so cool, so fun, and so amazing. But I think the takeaways are that it's what we really yearn for, right? You had a mission to heal your son. That heart-based energy unfolded this amazing path for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think that our longings are really powerful. And if we want to feel healthy, feel love, feel connected, we have to be able to honor that. And that's going to lead us to the right path.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And anybody listening that might be stuck in some sort of downward health spiral, and you feel overwhelmed, like, what do I even start with? Start with whatever you can start with. Don't look at what somebody else is doing and say, well, it's got to be the supplements, or it's got to be this, or it's got to be that. Do what you have the energy and capacity to do. So if that's opening your window and doing that every day for 3 months till you have enough energy to take it outside and sit outside, whatever it is, just start taking those baby steps. And just like for me, the pieces will unfold for you naturally. The less you resist, the more naturally they'll unfold, the easier it will become. But it's a process. I've been sober for a little over 5 years now, and that was my first piece, right? I
Congratulations on
had
that,
to
by
get
the way.
sober, and then it was little pieces along the way. And there were so many times I wanted to give up, and I was so mad and felt so defeated. And this shit isn't going anywhere. But I can tell you that it is so worth it. And it gets better and better and better. And at this point, I feel like it couldn't get any better, but I know it's going to, because I felt like that in the past, right? I felt like this is it. This is the peak. This is the pinnacle. I just need to accept it. And it just continues to get better and better
I
and
love
better.
that.
So
Love it. Love it. Yeah. And congratulations on that. That's a huge, huge, achievement, that a lot of people spiral back to. So congratulations on that. That's huge.
thank
And
you.
I love that advice. I think that's beautiful advice. Just do what you can, start where you're at, tune into what your body needs a little bit and what you're capable of at this time, and then get somebody to support you, because I'm a coach. I still have a coach. You know what I'm saying? Like, get people to support you along this, because health and wellness, having a guide is really, really helpful on a journey. You're like, okay, this is gonna, because sometimes we need to open our eyes to things that we can't see in our own environment, or, that are holding us back, so it's really, really important to have that
Yeah,
too.
100%. And even if you were trying to become a CEO or a millionaire, like if that was your goal, you would still need to have a mentor, right? You'd need to look to someone who's already done it. You wouldn't be chasing down Joe Blow, who can't even save $5 every month, right? And following his advice. You would be following someone's advice who's already done it, who's been down that path, who resonates with you. Look for someone like that and start emulating them. I mean, if that's all you can do, if you can't afford a coach, if you can't afford any of that stuff, just do what you can. Watch what they're doing and start behaving in that manner. And pretty soon you'll be amazed. Your whole life will be different.
Yeah, I
Well,
love
find
that.
information, right? Like we all have information on our websites. Kelley,
Mhm.
you're going to do something new, I think, as of yesterday. You said you're revamping things. What are you offering right now, and how can people find you?
Mhm.
So right now I'm in the process of taking down all my old content, and I'm getting ready to replace it with all new content. I am revamping my original, my mind body masterclass, which you were one of my participants in the first go round. But I've learned so much since the last time I did it. I'm kind of paring it down, making it much easier for people to understand. I'm making videos to go along with it, so they'll have the option to watch the video or read the content. So that'll be a whole masterclass, and then I'll have smaller modules for people who are looking to just get started and just digest smaller bits and pieces of it along the way. I've gotten great feedback from clients and some of my followers of what they're looking for and what would be the most beneficial. So that's what I'm doing right now, is making a whole bunch of new content for people to, kind of self-help, because not everybody can afford a coach or all of this stuff plus their supplements and their whatever it is that they do. But so having options and price ranges that can apply to everyone and what stage that they're at. Right now I am mostly on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is Kelley Croft. But I'm also host a podcast or a roundtable with my friend Lauren, and it's also called The Quantum Connection, but it's called the Quantum Connection Roundtable. We do it over on Twitter live. Tomorrow we're having Jalal Khan. He is a quantum dentist, and he's freaking brilliant, and I can't wait to talk to him. So that will be very exciting. And then after the live event, it takes us about a week to get it over and posted on Spotify. So we've got a Spotify account as well where you can go and listen to past episodes. I think that's all I'm involved in right now.
So that's good.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. Plus I homeschool, plus
and you have coaching on this you do as well. Yeah, I know here. Jalal is amazing. We have to get him on one day, Heather. He's so cool. I love him.
He's on our list. Yes, absolutely.
He's so brilliant. Yeah. So
and it's another one of those people that the energy resonates from him. I got that from him the first time I watched one of his videos. There are those people, right, that it radiates. It's not forced. You can tell he's passionate about it. And he doesn't just apply it in this sense of, coaching people one-on-one. He's applying it to his dentistry practice, and he's helping children and all, just fantastic. So I'm excited.
I'll definitely tune in.
So go find Kelley, everybody. It's at Kelley Croft on Instagram, KelleyCroff. It's a great account. You got to follow her. And then in the link in bio, you can find all of her offerings. So wonderful. Well,
thank you, ladies. It was so nice to chat with both of you. I am so incredibly grateful for you extending this offer to me, and I apologize for being a little bit late.
Oh, you were perfect.
No. Well, my bad on the communication, the timing, not a problem.
We appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your story and your passion and your strength and resilience and all the things. It was really beautiful. So thank you for that, Kelley.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Yeah.